Lonely farmer saved Apache chief's son. Next day chief came with 20 brides. Choose one. His small farm sat on the edge of a vast, open plain, where the horizon stretched endlessly, meeting the sky in shades of gold at sunset. Every day he rose with the first light, the cold morning air brushing against his face as he stepped out of the tiny cabin that had been his home for years. Life for Samuel was simple, repetitive, and lonely, but it was life he had grown accustomed to after losing his family many years ago. The memories of his wife and children were still fresh in his mind, sometimes haunting him in the quiet of the night. The farm had become his world and the animals his only companions. He spent his mornings tending to the fields, plowing the land, planting seeds, and repairing fences. Samuel's hands were rough and calloused from years of labor, but they were also careful and skilled. He knew each corner of his land, each tree, and every animal by sight and habit. His days were filled with work, but his evenings were filled with silence. He would sit on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, listening to the distant sounds of nature, and thinking about life and the paths it had taken him on. The isolation was sometimes heavy, pressing on him like the long shadows of evening, but Samuel had grown used to it. He rarely ventured into town, only going when he absolutely needed supplies. To the few townsfolk who knew him, he was just the quiet farmer living on the outskirts, a man of few words, hard to get to know but honest and dependable. One crisp morning, when the sun was just starting to rise, Samuel set out to check the northern fence line. He carried his old wooden staff, leaning on it as he walked, and hummed softly to himself. The air smelled of dew and fresh earth, the kind of smell that reminded him why he loved working his land. Birds began to stir, singing their morning songs as the sky slowly turned pink and orange. Samuel was about halfway along the fence when he heard a faint cry. At first, he thought it was a bird or maybe an animal in distress, but the sound grew louder, more urgent. It was human. Samuel's heart quickened as he followed the noise. The cries were high-pitched and panicked, and they led him to the edge of the forest that bordered his property. From the safety of the tree line, he saw a small figure struggling against a herd of wild horses. The horses were thrashing, kicking up dirt and dust, their manes flying in the wind. The boy was trapped in the middle, trying desperately to escape, but the animals were too fast and too powerful. Samuel felt a surge of fear and concern. He had seen the strength of horses before, and he knew that one wrong move could injure both him and the boy. Without thinking twice, Samuel ran toward the boy, shouting loudly to distract the horses. His voice carried across the clearing, strong and commanding. The boy froze for a moment. Then Samuel threw his jacket to the ground as a makeshift barrier, grabbing the boy by the arm and pulling him toward safety. The horses swerved at the sudden movement, their hooves thundering against the earth, but Samuel's quick reflexes and calm determination guided the boy out of danger. The boy stumbled, breathless and terrified, but he was alive. Samuel's heart pounded in his chest as he led the boy away from the herd, finally reaching a safe spot near a small grove of trees. The boy fell to his knees, trembling, and Samuel knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay now. You're safe," Samuel said gently. The boy looked up, his eyes wide and filled with fear and gratitude. "Thank you, sir," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Samuel offered him water from his flask and helped him catch his breath. The boy's hands were scratched and his clothes were torn, but there were no serious injuries. Samuel felt a wave of relief wash over him. Saving the boy had been dangerous, but seeing him alive and unharmed made every risk worthwhile. The boy introduced himself as Little Wolf, a young member of the Apache tribe who had wandered too far from home while hunting. Samuel listened carefully, realizing that the boy must have been very scared and that returning him safely was now his responsibility. "You should not have come so far alone," Samuel said kindly. It could have been much worse. Little Wolf nodded, still catching his breath, his eyes glancing nervously toward the forest. Samuel could see the courage in the boy, but also the fear of what might have happened if the horses had trampled him. As they made their way back toward Samuel's cabin, Samuel thought about the unusual bond that had already begun to form between them. The boy's trust in him was immediate, and Samuel felt a strange warmth he had not felt in years. He had lived alone for so long that he had almost forgotten the simple joy of helping someone in need, of being needed himself. The cabin, usually quiet and still, seemed to welcome the new presence. Samuel gave Little Wolf some dry clothes and a simple meal of bread and stew. As the boy ate, Samuel watched him carefully, noticing how polite and respectful he was despite the frightening ordeal. During the evening, Samuel and Little Wolf shared stories by the fire. Samuel told the boy about life on the farm, the challenges, and the quiet joys of tending to the land. Little Wolf spoke of his tribe, his father the chief, and the lessons he had learned about bravery and respect. Samuel listened intently, feeling a connection growing between them. He realized that despite their different worlds, they shared something fundamental, a sense of duty, courage, and the importance of doing the right thing even when it is difficult. As night fell, the forest outside seemed alive with sounds. Crickets chirped, and the wind rustled the leaves. Samuel felt a sense of peace, unusual for a man who had spent so many years alone. He watched Little Wolf fall asleep on a makeshift bed near the fire, exhausted but safe. Samuel sat back in his chair, staring into the flames, reflecting on the day's events. Saving the boy had been more than just a moment of bravery. It had been a turning point in his lonely life. For the first time in years, Samuel felt that perhaps his life could change, that there might be more to his story than endless days of solitude. The fire crackled softly, filling the room with warmth and light. Samuel realized that tomorrow would bring new challenges, especially returning the boy safely to his tribe, but he felt ready. The fear of the unknown did not paralyze him as it once might have. He had acted with courage today, guided by instinct and kindness, and he would do so again if needed. As he finally rose to retire for the night, Samuel felt a spark of hope, fragile but real. He had saved a life, and in doing so, he had begun to rediscover the life he thought he had lost forever. Outside, the stars twinkled above the quiet plains, and the wind whispered through the trees as if acknowledging the courage and compassion of a lonely farmer who had dared to step into danger for another. Samuel, once so isolated, now had a purpose beyond his farm. And in the quiet of that night, the first threads of a story began to weave, a story of bravery, kindness, and unexpected friendship that would change both his life and the life of the boy he had saved. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the horizon, spilling golden light. Across Samuel's small farm, the air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of dew and earth. Samuel stirred from his modest bed, careful not to wake Little Wolf, who was still asleep near the fire. He had spent the night thinking about the boy and the events of the previous day. Saving Little Wolf had been instinctive, but now he realized it carried responsibilities. He could not simply let the boy wander back into the wild alone, not when danger lurked everywhere. By the time Little Wolf opened his eyes, the cabin was filled with a soft, warm light. He stretched and rubbed his face, still tired from the ordeal. "Good morning," Samuel said kindly, offering a small smile. Little Wolf returned it, his eyes bright despite the lingering fear. He sat up slowly, glancing around the cabin, taking in the simplicity of Samuel's home. The boy had never seen anything like it before. A small fireplace, neatly arranged furniture, and a garden just outside the window. It was a quiet and peaceful world, very different from the forest and the tribal village he knew. Samuel handed Little Wolf a cup of warm water and some bread. "You need strength if we are going to make the journey back to your village today," he said. Little Wolf nodded, grateful for Samuel's care. As he ate, he told Samuel more about his life. He spoke of his father, the chief of the Apache tribe, and the lessons he had learned about courage, honesty, and respect for others. Samuel listened closely, fascinated by the boy's stories. He realized that despite the difference in their worlds, there were similarities in the values they both cherished. After breakfast, Samuel prepared for the journey. He packed a small bag with essentials: food, water, and blankets. He also brought along a first aid kit in case they encountered more danger. Little Wolf watched with curiosity, clearly impressed by Samuel's careful planning. "Are you sure we can make it back safely?" he asked. Samuel looked at the boy, his expression calm but serious. "We must," he replied. "It is not safe for you to be out here alone, and I will not leave you behind. We will go together step by step." As they set out, the farm faded behind them, replaced by the dense forest. Samuel guided Little Wolf along a narrow path, careful to avoid obstacles and dangerous areas. The boy followed closely, trusting Samuel completely. Along the way, they encountered birds singing in the trees, deer grazing quietly, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. For Samuel, the forest was familiar, a place of beauty and challenge. For Little Wolf, it was a mixture of home and caution, filled with memories of lessons taught by his father. During the journey, Samuel began to notice small details about Little Wolf. The boy was brave, yes, but also thoughtful and careful. He asked questions about the farm, about Samuel's life, and about the world beyond the forest. Samuel answered patiently, sharing knowledge and experiences without making the boy feel inferior or ignorant. Little Wolf, in turn, shared stories of the Apache village, of the people, their customs, and the deep respect for nature and animals. Samuel found himself learning, gaining insights into a culture he had never known, and feeling a growing admiration for the boy and his tribe. As the day wore on, they encountered challenges. A river blocked their path, the current swift and dangerous. Samuel scouted ahead, looking for a safe crossing. He found a narrow section with rocks protruding above the water. Carefully, he guided Little Wolf across, helping him step from stone to stone. The boy's trust in Samuel was evident as he held Samuel's hand and followed his lead. When they reached the other side safely, Little Wolf's face lit up with relief and gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply. Samuel nodded, feeling a quiet pride. It was not just about the physical journey, it was about the trust and connection they were building along the way. During a brief rest under the shade of an old oak tree, Samuel and Little Wolf shared more stories. Samuel told the boy about his family, about the wife and children he had lost to illness, and about the loneliness that had filled his days since. Little Wolf listened, eyes wide, absorbing the sadness but also the strength in Samuel's voice. "I am glad you saved me," Little Wolf said softly, "and I am glad I met you. You are brave and you care for others." Samuel felt a lump in his throat, unaccustomed to hearing such sincere words. It warmed him in a way that years of solitude never had. As they continued their journey, the terrain became rougher. Hills rose steeply, and the path narrowed, with thorny bushes threatening to scratch them. Samuel led carefully, using his experience and knowledge of the land to navigate the obstacles. Little Wolf followed, imitating his steps, learning how to move carefully, how to observe the surroundings, and how to respect the forest. The boy's courage impressed Samuel, but more than that, his willingness to learn and adapt showed a maturity beyond his years. Samuel began to think that this boy had a special spirit, one that could face challenges with strength and intelligence. By late afternoon, they reached a small clearing. Samuel paused to rest and check their progress. He knew they were not far from the outskirts of the Apache village, but he also understood that the final stretch could be the most dangerous. Wild animals roamed freely, and other hazards of the forest could appear without warning. "We must be careful," Samuel said, his voice low but firm. Little Wolf nodded, his face serious. "I trust you," he said. Samuel smiled, feeling a mix of pride and responsibility. The bond between them was growing stronger, forged through danger, trust, and mutual respect. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they heard distant voices and the sound of drums. Samuel knew they were approaching the village. Little Wolf's eyes brightened, and a nervous excitement filled the air. He had been scared and alone, but now he would return to his people, thanks to Samuel's bravery and guidance. Samuel felt a mixture of emotions, relief, satisfaction, and a strange sense of attachment. He had spent years alone, but in the boy's presence, he had felt alive, connected, and needed once again. Finally, they reached the edge of the village. The sight of the Apache homes, the people moving about their daily tasks, and the familiar sounds of the community filled Little Wolf with joy. Samuel stayed back slightly, letting the boy run forward to reunite with his family. The chief, a tall, dignified man, approached, his eyes sharp and assessing. Little Wolf ran to him, explaining quickly that Samuel had saved him from the wild horses. The chief's eyes studied Samuel carefully, noticing his worn clothes, the sweat on his brow, and the calm but confident way he had guided the boy. Samuel felt the weight of the chief's gaze but did not falter. He had done what was right, and now he waited to see how it would be received. The chief's expression softened slightly as he looked at Samuel. "You risked your life for my son," he said, his voice deep and commanding. "That is not a small thing." Samuel bowed his head respectfully. "I did what anyone should do. The boy needed help, and I could not leave him in danger." The chief nodded, a quiet respect in his eyes. The elders and villagers gathered around, murmuring among themselves. It was clear that Samuel's actions had earned their admiration and gratitude. Little Wolf stood by Samuel's side, beaming with pride and relief. That evening, Samuel was invited to stay in the village for a simple meal. He shared food with the villagers, laughed at their stories, and listened to the chief speak about their ways, customs, and traditions. Samuel realized that this community, so different from the lonely life he had known, was filled with warmth, respect, and a deep sense of family. For the first time in years, he felt truly welcomed, not as an outsider, but as someone who had shown courage and compassion. As night fell over the village, Samuel and Little Wolf sat near a fire, the boy's family nearby. Samuel watched the flames dance and reflected on the journey. Saving Little Wolf had started as a simple act of kindness, but it had grown into something much more, a connection, a friendship, and perhaps the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Samuel realized that helping another person could change not just their life, but his own as well. And in the quiet of the night, surrounded by the gentle hum of the village and the warmth of a fire, Samuel understood that courage, compassion, and trust could create bonds stronger than any loneliness he had ever known. Samuel woke before sunrise, the gentle sounds of the Apache village stirring around him. Chickens clucked, and the faint hum of morning voices drifted through the air. The night had been quiet and peaceful, yet Samuel knew that today would be important. Today, he would meet the chief and the elders formally, and explain how he had saved Little Wolf. Although he had always acted out of instinct and kindness, he felt a quiet nervousness. He had never dealt with such a situation before, and he respected the authority and traditions of the tribe. Little Wolf was already awake, his eyes bright with excitement. He had spent the night recounting the previous day's events to his family, and now seemed eager to introduce Samuel properly. "Are you ready?" he asked. Samuel nodded, adjusting his worn jacket and smoothing back his hair. He could see the pride and hope in the boy's eyes, and it strengthened his resolve. They walked together to the center of the village, where a small gathering of people had begun to form. Women with colorful clothing tended to morning chores, while men exchanged greetings and prepared for the day. The air was filled with the earthy scent of cooking fires, fresh herbs, and warm soil. The chief emerged from a nearby dwelling, tall and commanding. His presence was immediate and powerful. His eyes scanned Samuel carefully, noting every detail: the calloused hands, the humble clothing, the calm and steady gaze. Samuel felt a little intimidated, but reminded himself that he had done nothing wrong. He had helped Little Wolf, and that was all that mattered. The chief walked toward them, flanked by two elders, and Samuel instinctively straightened his posture, offering a respectful nod. Little Wolf ran ahead, greeting his father eagerly. "Father," Little Wolf began, "this man saved me yesterday. He risked his life when I was in danger." The chief's eyes narrowed slightly, studying Samuel. There was silence for a moment, a tension in the air as the chief weighed his words. Finally he spoke, his voice deep and calm. "Is this true?" Samuel stepped forward, his voice steady. "Yes, Chief. I saw the boy in danger and could not leave him. It was the right thing to do." The chief studied him in silence for several moments, then nodded slowly. There was a respect in his expression that Samuel had not expected, a quiet acknowledgement of courage and honesty. The elders whispered among themselves, nodding occasionally. Samuel noticed that they did not speak in a harsh tone but seemed to communicate in gestures and brief words, their eyes thoughtful. One of the elders stepped forward, a tall man with silver hair and gentle eyes. He spoke to the chief, and after a short pause the chief addressed Samuel again. "You have shown bravery and care for my son. That is not common among strangers." Samuel bowed slightly, feeling honored by the acknowledgement. "I did what I thought anyone should do," he said humbly. The chief's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "Perhaps, but few do." The chief invited Samuel to sit with them near the ceremonial fire in the center of the village. The villagers gathered around, curious and respectful, observing this unusual visitor who had acted with such courage. Samuel was offered food, cornbread, roasted vegetables, and fresh water. He accepted politely, careful to honor their customs, though his heart was more focused on the boy and his family. Little Wolf sat beside him, his face glowing with pride and relief. Samuel realized that this boy, whom he had saved, was also saving him in a way. Samuel had felt lonely for years, but here, surrounded by people who valued courage, he was beginning to feel a sense of belonging. During the meal, the chief asked Samuel questions about his life, his farm, and his skills. Samuel answered honestly, speaking of the land he tended, the animals he cared for, and the quiet life he had led for so many years. The chief listened carefully, nodding occasionally, his expression thoughtful. Samuel noticed that the chief was not just evaluating his words but observing his demeanor, the way he spoke, the respect in his voice, and the honesty in his eyes. Samuel felt a mixture of pride and humility. It was rare to meet someone who could judge not just actions, but character so clearly. After the meal, the chief and the elders asked Samuel to accompany them on a walk through the village. They showed him the homes, the community gardens, and the workshops where people made clothing, tools, and pottery. Samuel was impressed by the efficiency and harmony of the village. Everything was practical, purposeful, and done with care. Children played nearby, watched over by older siblings, while elders shared knowledge with the younger generation. Samuel realized that this community, though different from his solitary farm, shared his values of hard work, respect, and responsibility. The chief finally stopped near a large oak tree at the edge of the village. He turned to Samuel, his expression serious but not unkind. "You have proven your courage, stranger. You have risked your life for my son without hesitation. That is rare and honorable. Your actions show more than bravery. They show respect for life, for others, and for the bond that connects all people." Samuel felt a warmth in his chest at the words. He had never thought of himself as heroic, only as someone doing what was necessary. Yet here was a man of wisdom and authority recognizing something deeper in him. Little Wolf stood nearby, his small hand clutching Samuel's. The boy's trust and admiration were evident, and Samuel realized that this bond was more than just gratitude. It was a friendship forged in the fire of danger and tempered by mutual respect. The chief's eyes softened as he looked at both of them. "I see that you have a good heart, Samuel. Perhaps our families can learn from each other. Perhaps you can stay, at least for a short while, so we may honor what you have done." Samuel bowed his head respectfully. "I am grateful, Chief. I would be honored to stay for as long as you wish." That afternoon, Samuel was invited to participate in a small ceremony honoring his actions. The villagers gathered, drums beating softly in the background, as the chief spoke of courage, kindness, and respect. Samuel watched quietly, feeling a mixture of humility and pride. He had acted without expectation, yet here he was, being recognized and celebrated. Little Wolf beamed at him from the front of the crowd, his eyes shining with admiration. Samuel realized that moments like these were rare in life, and he felt thankful for the chance to witness the beauty of community, honor, and tradition. After the ceremony, the chief spoke privately with Samuel. "You have shown that your heart is honorable. I will trust you, not just for saving my son, but because of the respect and care you have shown. You may stay in the village for now, and we will see how the future unfolds." Samuel nodded, understanding that this was not a small gesture. Trust was something the chief gave carefully, and Samuel would not take it lightly. He promised himself that he would honor this trust, not only by helping Little Wolf, but by respecting the customs and people of the village. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, Samuel sat near the fire with Little Wolf and his family. The boy leaned against Samuel, speaking softly about the village, the animals, and the lessons he had learned from his father. Samuel listened, absorbing the knowledge and feeling the warmth of human connection he had almost forgotten. He realized that life could change in a single day. One decision, one act of courage, could lead to unexpected friendships and a sense of belonging he had never imagined. The stars emerged in the night sky, twinkling above the quiet village. Samuel reflected on the journey so far, from the farm to the rescue to the village to the recognition by the chief. It had been overwhelming, exhausting, but deeply fulfilling. He felt a connection to the land, the people, and the boy that he had never felt before. He knew that tomorrow would bring new experiences and challenges, but he felt ready. For the first time in years, Samuel understood that life could hold surprises, that courage and kindness could create bonds stronger than loneliness, and that trust and respect were treasures more valuable than anything else in the world. As the fire crackled and the village settled into quiet sleep, Samuel felt a sense of peace and purpose. He had come into the forest a lonely man, but now, surrounded by people who recognized his heart and bravery, he felt part of something greater. And in the glow of the fire, in the laughter and stories of the villagers, and in the quiet trust of Little Wolf, Samuel realized that life had begun a new chapter for him, one filled with hope, friendship, and the promise of new beginnings. The morning sun rose over the Apache village, casting a warm, golden glow across the landscape. Birds sang from the trees, and the faint sound of drums and voices echoed in the distance. Samuel had just finished his breakfast with Little Wolf when a sudden commotion stirred near the edge of the village. People began to gather, whispering and pointing, their faces filled with curiosity and excitement. Samuel frowned, unsure what was happening, but Little Wolf's eyes widened with anticipation. "Father is coming," he said quietly. Samuel nodded, feeling a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. He had no idea what to expect. Soon, the chief appeared, riding a sturdy horse and followed by a group of villagers. But Samuel's eyes widened in disbelief when he noticed that behind the chief were 20 young women, all dressed in beautifully woven garments, their expressions calm but attentive. Each woman carried herself with grace, and Samuel could sense that they were respected members of the tribe, trained in skills, knowledge, and the traditions of their people. The chief reined in his horse and dismounted, standing tall and commanding, yet his eyes held a twinkle that Samuel had not seen before. The villagers fell silent, waiting for what was about to happen. Samuel felt a rush of surprise and confusion as the chief began to speak. "Samuel," he said in a firm but friendly voice, "yesterday you saved my son's life. You acted without hesitation, showing bravery, kindness, and honor. That is rare. In our tribe, courage and goodness are valued above all else. To honor you, I have brought these young women, all skilled, wise, and capable, so that you may choose one to become your companion. Choose wisely, for she will share your life, your home, and your future." Samuel stood frozen, his mind racing. 20 women all offered to him. It was overwhelming. He had lived alone for so many years, never imagining that a day like this could arrive. Part of him felt disbelief, unsure if he had heard the chief correctly. He glanced at Little Wolf, who stood nearby, excitement shining in his young eyes. "You can choose anyone, Samuel," the boy whispered. "They are all kind and they will respect you." Samuel nodded slowly, trying to process the situation. The women stepped forward one by one, bowing their heads respectfully. Samuel observed them carefully. Some were quiet and reserved, their eyes gentle and thoughtful. Others were lively, smiling and making small gestures to show friendliness. Samuel noticed their skills in daily life, the way they moved, their hands strong from work, their knowledge evident in subtle ways. It was clear that each woman had her own qualities, talents, and personality. Choosing one would not be easy, and Samuel felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. He walked slowly among the women, greeting each one and asking small questions. Some spoke of their skills in farming, weaving, cooking, or medicine. Others spoke of their love for children, animals, and the land. Samuel listened carefully, trying to understand not just their words but their hearts. He realized that this choice was more than just about companionship. It was about shared values, mutual respect, and the possibility of building a family. Each woman had something unique to offer, and Samuel wanted to be certain that his choice would honor her as much as it honored him. Hours passed as Samuel spoke with each of the women. He asked about their dreams, their hopes for the future, and their feelings about life in the village and beyond. He observed how they treated others, their kindness and patience, and their willingness to work together. Little Wolf stayed close, quietly offering advice when Samuel looked unsure. "She will be happy with you," he said softly, "but only if your heart chooses her." Samuel nodded, understanding that this was not a choice to be rushed. It required thought, reflection, and intuition. As the day wore on, Samuel began to feel a connection with one of the women, a gentle and kind-hearted woman named Nea. She spoke softly, yet her words carried wisdom beyond her years. She had a love for the land, the animals, and the people, much like Samuel. When she spoke about her life in the village, her eyes sparkled with hope and purpose. Samuel found himself drawn to her calm demeanor, her quiet strength, and the sincerity in her voice. For the first time that day, he felt certain of his choice. Nea smiled as Samuel approached her. "Hello, Samuel," she said gently. "I have heard much about you. You have a brave and kind heart, and it is clear you care for others deeply. I would be honored to share my life with you if that is your wish." Samuel felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He looked into her eyes, seeing honesty, compassion, and a shared understanding of life's hardships and joys. Without hesitation, he nodded. "I would be honored as well," he replied. The chief observed silently, a quiet smile on his face, as Samuel and Nea acknowledged their choice. The villagers around them clapped softly, their faces smiling with approval. The elders nodded, recognizing that Samuel had chosen wisely. The other women stepped back respectfully, bowing to Samuel and Nea, acknowledging the bond that had been formed. Samuel felt a sense of relief and happiness, knowing that he had made the right decision. The tension and uncertainty of the day melted away, replaced by a feeling of connection, trust, and hope for the future. The chief spoke again, his voice firm but kind. "You have chosen well, Samuel. Nea is skilled, wise, and kind. Together you will share life, work, and family. May your hearts guide you, and may your bond bring happiness to both of your lives." Samuel bowed, grateful for the chief's blessing. Nea smiled, her hand brushing against his, a quiet but powerful gesture of trust and partnership. Samuel realized that life had given him an opportunity he could never have imagined, all because of one courageous act, the rescue of Little Wolf. In the days that followed, Samuel and Nea began to work together, learning about each other's strengths and habits. Samuel showed Nea the farm, the fields, the animals, and the routines he had established over the years. Nea shared her knowledge of the village, its customs, traditions, and skills. They learned from each other, combining their strengths to make life more efficient, balanced, and joyful. Samuel realized that companionship was more than just sharing space. It was about understanding, respect, and collaboration. Samuel and Nea also spent time with Little Wolf, who was thrilled to see his friend and sister-in-spirit working together. The boy laughed and played, helping Samuel and Nea with small chores and learning new skills. Samuel felt a joy he had not known in years, a feeling of belonging and family he had thought lost forever. The village, too, welcomed Nea into their community, sharing stories, meals, and celebrations, and Samuel felt the warmth of inclusion and respect from people he had only recently met. Evenings were filled with quiet conversation and laughter. Samuel and Nea would sit near the fire, discussing the day's work, sharing thoughts about the future, and planning how to make the farm and village life better together. Samuel marveled at how much he had learned in just a few days, the value of trust, the importance of patience, and the beauty of shared purpose. Nea, too, discovered a deep respect for Samuel's strength, kindness, and steady character. Together, they began to imagine a life full of possibility, family, and shared dreams. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Samuel reflected on the events of the day. He had gone from being a lonely, solitary farmer to a man who had not only saved a life, but also found friendship, respect, and love. He realized that life was unpredictable and that small acts of courage could change everything. From rescuing Little Wolf to earning the trust of the chief, to choosing Nea as his partner, every moment had led to this new chapter. Samuel felt a deep sense of gratitude, knowing that kindness, courage, and integrity had opened doors he never thought possible. As night fell, Samuel and Nea sat near the fire, the village quiet around them. They spoke of the future, of working together on the farm, learning from each other, and building a life filled with love and purpose. Samuel felt a sense of peace he had not known in years. He had found not only a companion but a family, a community, and a renewed sense of meaning in life. The stars above twinkled, reflecting the possibilities of the days to come. And for Samuel, who had once lived only with solitude, the world now felt full of hope, connection, and the promise of happiness he had long thought lost. The days following Samuel's choice of Nea as his companion were filled with both hard work and joy. Samuel, who had spent years tending his small farm alone, now found himself sharing his life with someone who understood him, who cared for the land as he did, and who brought warmth and laughter into his quiet home. Nea moved gracefully around the farm, learning quickly how to help with the animals, repair fences, and tend to the crops. Samuel watched her with admiration. She was patient, thoughtful, and skilled, and it was clear that the bond they had formed during the day of her arrival was growing stronger with every passing hour. Little Wolf was often nearby, eager to help and to learn. He ran through the fields, feeding the chickens, checking on the goats, and assisting Samuel and Nea with small chores. His energy was infectious, and the farm, which had once been quiet and lonely, was now filled with movement, laughter, and life. Samuel had never realized how much he had missed this kind of connection until now. The presence of Naya and Little Wolf transformed the farm into a place of warmth and community, a stark contrast to the solitude that had filled Samuel's years before. Samuel and Naya quickly discovered the ways in which their skills complemented each other. Samuel had the experience of years working the land, understanding weather patterns and tending to animals, while Naya brought knowledge of the village's traditions, techniques for efficient planting, and methods for caring for the livestock. Together, they introduced small innovations that improved life on the farm. They built new tools, repaired old structures, and planted new crops that would provide better yields. Their work was not easy, but it was fulfilling, and the shared effort strengthened their partnership. The villagers continued to show their support and admiration for Samuel and Naya. They visited often, bringing gifts of food, advice, and tools. Samuel learned more about the traditions and customs of the Apache people, appreciating the wisdom that had been passed down through generations. Naya helped bridge the gap between the cultures, explaining village ways to Samuel and sharing Samuel's farming techniques with the villagers. It was a period of mutual learning and respect, where differences were embraced rather than feared. Samuel felt deeply grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this vibrant, caring community. Over time, Samuel began to see changes within himself as well. His loneliness, which had been a constant companion for years, began to fade. He found joy in shared meals, conversations by the fire, and the simple pleasures of working alongside someone who cared as much as he did. Naya's presence brought not only companionship, but also insight. She encouraged him to reflect on the past but not to dwell on it, to appreciate what he had now, and to plan for the future. Samuel realized that life was more than survival. It was about connection, purpose, and love. As the seasons changed, the farm prospered. The crops grew strong and healthy, the animals thrived, and Samuel and Naya found balance in their routines. They celebrated small victories together. A particularly successful harvest, the birth of a new goat or calf, or the repair of a fence that had withstood the storms of winter. Each accomplishment was a testament to their teamwork, their respect for the land, and their commitment to each other. Samuel felt a sense of pride he had never known, not for wealth or recognition, but for the life he was building with Naya and the boy he had saved. Little Wolf grew more confident each day. Samuel taught him practical skills like how to handle the animals safely, how to recognize signs of approaching storms, and how to care for crops. Naya, in turn, shared knowledge about the village's traditions, storytelling, and ways to respect the land and its animals. Together, they nurtured Little Wolf's growth, and the boy thrived in this environment of care, learning, and friendship. Samuel marveled at how one small act of bravery, the rescue of Little Wolf, had led to this network of connection, trust, and love that now filled his life. In the evenings after the work was done, Samuel and Naya would sit together by the fire. They shared stories of their past, their hopes for the future, and their dreams for the farm and family. Samuel told Naya about the years of solitude, about his family, and the emptiness that had weighed on him. Naya shared her experiences in the village, the lessons learned from the elders, and her hopes for a life of partnership and mutual respect. Each conversation strengthened their bond, creating a foundation of trust, understanding, and shared purpose that was deeper than either had imagined. The village also played an important role in their lives. Samuel and Naya were invited to participate in community events, celebrations, and ceremonies. Samuel learned the rhythms of tribal life, the dances, songs, and rituals that honored the land, animals, and ancestors. Naya helped him understand the significance of each tradition, teaching him how to show respect and participate meaningfully. Samuel felt a profound sense of belonging, a feeling that he had long yearned for during his years of isolation. He realized that life was richer when shared with others, and that courage, kindness, and integrity could create bonds that lasted a lifetime. Over time, Samuel and Nea began to think about their own family. The idea of children, of passing on knowledge, and of nurturing new life brought them joy and hope. Samuel reflected on the years he had spent alone, realizing that the loneliness he had endured had prepared him to appreciate this opportunity fully. He had learned patience, resilience, and respect for life, lessons that he now understood would guide him in raising a family. Nea shared his vision, and together they began to plan for a future filled with love, growth, and connection. One day, Samuel and Nea stood at the edge of the farm, looking out over the land they had worked together to nurture. The fields were lush, the animals healthy, and the village visible in the distance. Samuel took Nea's hand and smiled. "It's hard to believe that all of this began with a single act," he said softly, thinking of the day he had rescued Little Wolf. Nea nodded, her eyes shining. "Sometimes the smallest acts of courage can change everything," she replied. Samuel realized she was right. A moment of bravery had not only saved a life but had transformed his own, bringing friendship, respect, love, and purpose. As the years passed, Samuel and Nea's farm became a place of prosperity and community. The crops flourished, the animals thrived, and the house that once felt empty and quiet was now filled with laughter, conversation, and the warmth of family. Little Wolf grew into a strong and wise young man, skilled in both farming and the traditions of his tribe. The villagers continued to support and celebrate Samuel and Nea, honoring the courage, kindness, and respect that had brought them together. Samuel often reflected on how one act of bravery had created a ripple effect, touching the lives of many and transforming his own existence. Samuel knew that life would continue to bring challenges, storms, unpredictable weather, and the responsibilities of farm life, but he felt ready to face them with Nea by his side. Together, they had learned that partnership, trust, and mutual respect were the keys to a fulfilling life. They had found strength in each other, joy in shared work, and love in the bonds they had formed. Samuel understood that true happiness was not in wealth or recognition, but in the relationships, responsibilities, and purpose that gave life meaning. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Samuel stood at the edge of the fields, looking out over the land he had worked for so long. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the farm or the success they had achieved, but for the people who had become part of his life. Nea stood beside him, her hand in his, and Little Wolf played nearby, laughing as he chased a goat across the field. Samuel realized that he had come full circle, from a lonely, solitary man to a person surrounded by family, friendship, and community. Life, he understood now, was full of unexpected blessings, and one act of courage could truly change everything. Samuel's story became a quiet legend in both the village and the surrounding town. People spoke of the lonely farmer who had saved a boy, gained the trust of a proud chief, and found love and family where he least expected it. The tale was told not to glorify Samuel, but to remind others that courage, kindness, and integrity could create connections that transformed lives. Samuel himself never sought recognition, but he lived each day with a sense of fulfillment, knowing that his actions had brought hope, joy, and a sense of belonging that would last for generations. Years later, Samuel would often sit on the porch, watching the sun set over the fields he loved, Nea by his side and Little Wolf grown into a strong young man ready to face the world. The farm was no longer just a place of work. It was a home filled with life, laughter, and love. Samuel knew that the lonely days of the past had prepared him for this life, a life richer and fuller than he had ever imagined. And he smiled, knowing that in saving a boy, he had also saved himself, discovering the true meaning of family, community, and the power of compassion.